All right. Well, I got it 2 o'clock on my end here. So if you are joining, welcome. Also, if you can mute yourself, that would be great. We'll accept, of course, when you have a question. So welcome to the fourth workshop that we're having. The first one was getting started with ArcGIS Online, and then we did two workshops on Survey 123. And now we'll do dashboards, and then in about 3 weeks, we'll continue and we'll do the more advanced topic, ArcGIS Online. So let me go ahead here and see if you are joining. Can you make sure that your microphone is muted? I think I can set them all on my end too, but if you can mute yourself, that would be awesome. So with that, let's get started. I love dashboards. They're really fun to put together. Earlier this week, we had a dashboard state workshop. If you have not attended those yet, those are pretty cool. Once a month, I put together like an hour-long workshop, and the beauty of that one is it's not me talking, it's other people talking, and so people from different agencies spent about 5 to 7 minutes sort of showcasing some of their work. So earlier this week we did dashboards, and it is really truly amazing to see what people are putting together. So today I just want to give you the basics, and maybe we'll not make the prettiest dashboard, but I wanted to make sure that you sort of recognize all the different pieces, you know how to put them on there, and how to make them all work together and activate them. So we'll start with the first part, the getting ready part. The first part is really just kind of going back and seeing how layers, web maps, and apps all fit together. So we need to do a little bit of prep work before we can start building our dashboard. So in essence, we'll have to build a web map. So we'll do that. Also, I think a really good tool to show Survey 123 results is by putting it on a dashboard. And I worked on some examples earlier this week. I saw some really great examples. And then we'll just launch our dashboard, and then we're taking off from there. So the second part, we're going to add elements to our dashboard. So when we start it up, there will already be a map on there, but we'll go ahead and add the header. We'll throw on some indicators, gauges, lists, pie charts, serial charts. And then the last part is to add the action in there. So we'll add a sidebar, which is really a place where we can add our selectors, which those terms will make hopefully a lot more sense at the end of this training. We'll just activate all your selectors and make sure that all the elements on your dashboard work well together. And this is really the natural progression of creating a dashboard is getting ready, that is building a web map that has the data on it and the map itself. Then adding your elements, and I would always recommend that you basically put your dashboard together with your elements before you then at the very end make everything work together and activate it. So I enjoy making dashboards. They're fun to do, and hopefully you'll find the same after you're gone through this training. So let's get ready. So first, a quick refresher on web maps and apps, just in case you missed the very first training. So this right there, here is a web map. And you can recognize this as a web map because of the layout that's here. You can see the details, you can see the layers on it. And in this interface, you can add and remove those layers. You can configure the pop-ups, you can set the sharing options, you can set all the symbols. So this is a web map. And so on this web maps are different layers, the data that is feeding your map. So in this case, this web map has 2 layers. And then for each layer is, and the background, there's a table. And it's really the data in those layers that you will use then to make your indicators and graphs and charts come alive on your dashboard. But we start with the web map. Okay, and so the web maps are then the foundation for different web apps. So the web map's on the left, but then on the right-hand side, we can take the same web map and we can turn it into a story map. We can put it on an experience builder. We can create a dashboard, which is what we're going to do today. But it starts with this web map and the data, the layers that are on this web map. So that's where we are going to start. Okay, so let's get ready. Also, I have to mention, I did get some feedback on my previous training, and any of you, please let me know afterwards if this is helpful for you, if there are ways that I can make this more helpful. So the three pieces of feedback that I got was, one, the pace is really good. I can keep up and do my own exercises. Another one, they said it's going a little bit fast. And then the third one that said, oh, it's great, it's going fast, but we can look at the video afterwards and then do it ourselves at a slower pace and pause when we have to. So I guess sort of based on the mixed messages there, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. But if this is not working for you, or if you have, ideas, feedback, don't tell me right now, but tell me afterwards on how to make the future ones better. Let me know, because I'm doing this to help you, and so I'd like this to be as helpful as possible. Okay, so with that, let's get started. I'm gonna stop my PowerPoint here for a minute, and I am going to open up a browser, and I'll open up a new tab, and I am going to arcgis.com and sign into my ArcGIS online account. So let me go ahead and sign in. And so if you have a choice of browser, I'd like to work in Google Chrome. We still have Internet Explorer, and it just does not seem to work well. And especially the dashboards, you keep getting messages pop up saying that you really should not be using Internet Explorer for dashboards. I think you can still get away with it, but if you have Chrome or Firefox on your computer, use that instead. Okay, and so this morning you should have gotten a workbook, and so you can follow along with the steps if you like, or you can try it later on or try it on your own. So let me go ahead and click on map along the top here. And then let's go ahead and add data from the Living Atlas. So the layer I would like you to look for are the recent earthquakes. And then this is the layer that I would like you to add. So just click the plus in the corner and the arrow in the top left. And it should bring all the earthquakes. Okay, and there they are. So I really try when I put this together to pick data sets that all of you should have access to. So you should be able to get to this from any place. All right, so let's move on. Let's pick a base map, and I guess we all have our favorites. Lately, I tend to be stuck on the human geography map. I kind of like the gray background and the detail behind it, but pick what you like. Then we need to symbolize the earthquake layer, and I'm just going to turn the shake intensity off for now. Even in the future exercises, we're not really using this layer here. We're really focused on the first layer. So what I would like to do is symbolize them so that earthquakes that are stronger, that have a higher magnitude, are labeled with a larger symbol. So what I did there is I clicked on the symbology, change style icon. Um, I would like to show a different symbol based on the magnitude. So I will go ahead and select the one where the dots get bigger for the larger magnitudes. So I'll just click on options to refine that even a little bit more. Um, I will set my minimum to about 5, my maximum to about 40. And let me go ahead and click on my symbols. And let me see if I can find that bullseye. I think it was in the public safety. If not, we'll pick a different one. There it is. Okay. So I'll click OK on that. That looks a little bit on the big side. Oh, it looks like it reset my 50, so I'll just make it smaller again. And that's looking pretty good to me. So let me just go ahead and click OK and click Done. So this will be the map that we'll use going forward. Okay. All right, also would like to label the points by magnitude. So I'll just click on the 3 dots, manage my labels. Go ahead and just pick the magnitude, the third one from the top. And I'll just put it smack on, now let's put it to the top right of the label here. This is looking pretty good to me. Okay. So with that, let me just zoom out again a bit so that we can see all of the United States. Looks to me like those labels are just a little bit busy at this point. So maybe we don't want to display them until we are zoomed in a little bit closer. And also I would say that my symbols are still a little bit on the big side. So let me just go ahead and go back to my manage labels, and I'll just set my range so that I won't see them if I am further zoomed out. So there they are. Now they're gone. That seems about right. And I'll just go ahead and just make my symbols just even a little bit smaller. So let's make it from 2 to maybe 25. Okay, done. All right. That looks a little bit less busy. Okay, so let's go ahead and save my map. There's the United States. I'll go ahead and save it. Since it's the first time saving, it's going to ask me to give it a title and some tags. So I'll just call it Getting Started with Dashboards Earthquake Map. Oh. And for my tags, I'll just put in training. I like to put in temp. So at some point when I'm cleaning up my ArcGIS Online folders, I know that this one can be safely removed. I'll just put in earthquakes. As well as dashboard. Okay. I'll leave the summary blank for now because it's just a temporary map, and I'm just going to save it in my main folder. But of course, you can put it where you would like. So let me go ahead and save my map. And then let's switch and take a look at the attribute table here real quick. So one of the reasons why I picked the earthquake map is because it has quite a lot of different pieces of data, and so I thought it would be good because we can make quite a few, indicators and charts and things out of it. So as you can tell, we have the magnitude, the type of event, which is, earthquake, explosions, quarry blasts, and ice quakes. We have alert levels. We have the location, a description of the location, how old it is. The magnitude, we've already seen that. When this event occurred, um, let's see, the review status. Also, there's an attribute that says if a tsunami warning was an alert issue, if a tsunami alert was issued or not. So it has quite a few pieces of information that we can, work with. So let me fire up my PowerPoint, because based on the types of information that we have, I didn't mean to start right at the beginning here. Let's go to this slide right here. Based on the type of data, there's different types of graphs that we can make with that. So quantitative are numbers. If you're like me, you go like, well, qualitative, quantitative, how do I keep those separate? Well, quantitative has an N in it, which reminds me that it has to do with numbers. So quantitative is numbers. And so the magnitude, event depth, those are all numbers, and numbers that mean something. Because maybe you have something that is categorized as like 1, 2, or 3, and maybe those numbers don't really mean anything in relation to each other, but those numbers really mean something. Like an earthquake with magnitude 6 is indeed stronger than magnitude 5 and stronger than 4, and so on. So things that we can show with that is, statistics. How many do we have of a certain magnitude? We can show the sum, mean, standard deviation, things like that, the number of earthquakes that are greater than 4 or 5. We also can look at some other data categories. So an event type, for example, an explosion, an earthquake, an ice quake, or quarry blast, those are different event types, and we can put them on a chart. So for example, this could be the earthquakes, how many are there? This is the ice quake, how many are there? So we can label that like that. Also, categories are really good for pie charts, especially if they add up to a whole. So every event is of a specific type, and then we can sort of look and say, well, is 50% is this type, 25% is that type, and it all adds up to 100. And then the last type that we'll be working with are dates. So for example, the event time. So we can show trends over time. We can make a graph like that. So we'll be using those different types of data on our dashboard. But it's good to take a look at your attributes and just kind of seeing what data you have to work with. And of course, before you even start working on a dashboard, the same we talked about when we were just talking about making a map, you have to ask yourself, why am I making a map? What is the main message? And of course, the main message and the goals of your dashboard will determine which layers will then appear on your map, and then what indicators and dials and graphs you end up putting on your dashboard. Okay, so let's go ahead, and in your workbook, I put a link in to this particular survey. So we are going to add in a survey to the dashboard, but first we're going to also collect just a little bit of data so that there's some data to display on the dashboard. So even if you're not really following along, if you can click on the link in your handout, and I know you cannot click on the slide itself, which is why I pasted it also just below it, I would like you to go ahead and fill out the survey. So if you can all do that, at least we'll have a couple of surveys to show for. Okay, so I'm going to put in my name. When did I notice an earthquake? And of course, this is a dummy survey, right? Because we're just doing training. So please just make up data, because it seems unlikely that any of us, recently experienced an earthquake. So let's say that last Saturday, You know, right about this time, I noticed an earthquake and it was strong. So the heavy furniture moved and the plaster fell. And then on this little map right here, I can indicate, you know, where I felt that earthquake. So I should be able just to zoom in here and just find a spot where the earthquake occurred. So let's say this one happened right here. If you want, you can also just type in an address. And once you're done, let's just go ahead and click submit. Looks like I just went straight out in the ocean again. Here we go. I want to go right about there. Okay, I'll just go and submit my survey. So I'm assuming that you guys are submitting one right now as well. If you want, you know, if you're bored, you can do more than one. So with that, I'm going to go back to my dashboard and I am going to take the results of this survey and also add it to this map. So I need to go to my PowerPoint presentation because I put in the link. Oh, wait, I need to actually get way out of my PowerPoint presentation. I put in the service for this survey. And again, I pasted it below the slide that I captured. So you should be able to copy and paste that from your workbook. And then let's go back to my map. I'm going to click on add layer from web. And I'm just going to paste it right in there. And notice how mine is set to an ArcGIS server web server. Okay, so if I add in this layer, I can tell that some of you indeed put in some points here. Thank you for that. Okay, so I am going to rename this layer. I'm going to call it survey results. Let's just take out the whole thing. Survey results. Okay. And instead of the blank dots here, of the red dots, I'm going to symbolize this. I'll just show the locations only. And a symbol that I like to use a lot is a basic symbol and just a regular push pin. And I'll just increase this to about a 20. So it's easily noticeable on my map. Okay. So let me click OK and done. All right, I'll highlight the US again and go ahead and save my map. Okay, so the pop-up for this events by magnitude layer is actually really quite nice. So I would like to keep that one. But for those points right here, I think it would be really nice to just have that display in a list on our dashboard. So for now, what I am going to do is I'm going to turn the pop-ups off. So when people end up clicking on the map on the dashboard, it doesn't just always just show multiple pop-ups. So I'll just click on the three dots and I will remove the pop-up. Okay, so I'm thinking that my my map is in pretty decent shape here to get started on the dashboard. So let me go ahead and save my map one last time. So now we are on page 5 in your workbook and we are just ready to launch it. So click on share. And here, this is where you would decide like who this dashboard is for, if it's in a format that you would like to share yet. In our purposes, I mean, I'm just building this one for me right now to show you how to use a dashboard. So I won't share with anybody just yet, but I will go ahead and click on create a web app. Then click on the ArcGIS dashboard. And then we can tell that most of our information is already filled in. So the only thing that I am going to change is that I'll just write down the word dashboard at the end here. But otherwise my tags and my folder and everything look just fine. Okay, so with that, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and click done. So we've done all the prep work and we are finally ready to start working on our actual dashboard. So let's start by just taking a look at this map. So we will have a lot of different elements on this dashboard. I'll refer to them as either elements or items. And so this map is just one of the items. And every item has a blue handle in the corner. The top one allows you to drag the item around, which doesn't do much at the moment since, we just have one of them. So it's not like I can rearrange anything just yet. We can configure it, which we will do soon. We can duplicate it, which is super handy, as you will see a little bit later on, or we can go ahead and delete it. But for now, let's just go ahead and go and configure our map. So in your workbook on the slide that I put in there, it kind of shows you what the different things do. So you can decide, of course, yourself at any point how you would like to organize your map, if you want to show pop-ups at all or not. For the scale bar, if you'd like to get a line or a ruler, and your workbook kind of shows you what both of those look like. I do like to put in the default extent because it gives you that home button. So if people get completely lost, they can click on the little house and it will just basically zoom them out to the same extent as the map that you just saved. You can allow people to look at the legend, which is kind of nice. Allow people to turn layers on and off. Allow people to switch their base map or not, just in case they don't like the human geography base map as much as I do. The zoom in, zoom out, which is the little plus minus that you see at the corner of your map. I like that. The search might be good. This is where you just get the little bar and people can put in an address and it will zoom them right there. Seeing as how we are working on like a worldwide map, maybe not as relevant. Also, I would say if you have a dashboard and your map gets to be really small because you have so many other elements and charts and things that are surrounding it, sometimes this search bar sort of takes up quite a bit of real estate on your map itself. But this is easy. You can always just play around with it and change it later if you don't like it. So the point zoom scale, later on when we start activating your dashboard, you'll see, for example, if you have a list of different earthquakes and you click on one of them, it will then zoom the map to that particular earthquake. And this determines how far you're zooming in. And so let's keep it at 10,000 for now. And then at the very end, when we're just trying it all out, we can always change that if that does not seem to be the right number. So let me see here. Next, let's go to the General tab. We need to give our map a name. And so let me call this the earthquake map. And also give it a title. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference between a name and a title? The name is not actually visible on your dashboard. The title is. The name basically refers back to the element that you have on the map. So let's say if you have like 5 or 6 maps on your dashboard, they could be called map 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And perhaps once you start configuring things, it might just be hard for you to keep track of exactly what map 1 was or map 2. And so maybe you won't have 6 maps, but I have built dashboards with about 20 different little indicators on it. And after a while, it does get confusing if you wanted to activate indicator 18 or 20. So this is really for you and maybe others that are, looking under the hood in your dashboard to sort of figure out which element is which. Now the title does appear at the top of your map. So for the title, let's call this the just earthquakes. And there's different ways that you can format this. So I'm going to highlight it, and under the normal, I can pick the size of my text. I find that heading 3 tends to work well on my dashboard based on the size that things are, although this map may end up being pretty big. So let's pick 3 for now, but later on in the end, just to make things look pretty, you can always make it smaller or larger. Let's see here. Let's center it in the middle. So it will appear above the map, but in the middle of the map. You can make it bold, italicize. Here you can change different colors. You can change the background color of just what's behind here. So for example, if I choose red, it just makes that piece red. And so you do have some abilities to format that. So I believe that was the last piece that I wanted to do here with the maps. So at the end, when we start talking about activating, we'll talk about the map actions and the map layers. Okay, so you can see that those buttons now appeared. We should have the plus minus button, zoom in, zoom out buttons. We added the ruler in there. You can see the title, so we just configured all of that. All right, so next, what I would like to add in there is the header. So we have made it to page 6 in your workbook. So let's go ahead and add a header in there. I can see now that I forgot to do something, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so you can make it smaller, medium, or large. The title will default to whatever you call your dashboard, which in this case works fine. If you want to call it something else, you can override it with a different name. If you want, you can put a little icon in there. This is kind of cool. They have lots of different icons that you can pick from. You can give it a subtitle. You can put a logo in there. You can change the text color. And of course, if you make it white, you probably also want to change the background color. You can put in a background image. And I just realized that the URL is just typed in my slide, but I didn't give it to you separate. So I am just going to go on my slide, just copy and paste it, so at least you know what it would look like. And let me see, I believe I am on this slide right here. So let me just grab this here, and at the very least you can see how that would work. So you can see it just popped in my little picture, which I can center on the right, center on the left, fit the width. So yeah, lots of different options. All right, so with that, let me just fit the height, and let's call the header done. There it is. Okay, so with that, next we are going to add in 2 indicators. So before I do anything else, I am just going to hit the save button. Slideshow. Okay, I need to go slideshow from current slide. Here we go. Okay, so we are going to add in 2 indicators. So the first one shows you the number of earthquakes that are in the United States, and then compare that to the total number worldwide. So you can see that there are 2 numbers in here. So we'll use the count statistic. And then also we'll put in one that shows the average magnitude of earthquakes in the previous 3 days. And then as a challenge, we'll build another one that is like this one, and it doesn't show the number of earthquakes in the US compared to, worldwide. We'll show the number of earthquakes in Idaho compared to the US. All right, so with that, let's add in our first indicator. There we go again, back to my dashboard. This is the spot where you can add in all your new elements. So let's start with a indicator. Then it's asking you, well, which one of the layers on your map has the data that you would like to show on your indicator? And so for most of our exercises, we'll just use the main layer from the USGS, the recent earthquakes, events by magnitude. And so you can see on the left here, there are different tabs, and they vary a little bit depending on the type of element that you're working with. But I recommend you start at the top and you basically just work your way down. So we'll just grab our value from this layer that we just picked. And what we want to show are the earthquakes that are in the United States. So let's see how we can best filter those out, because this is the total number worldwide. So we can toggle between a preview of the indicator and the data table behind it, which is really quite handy. And so if we look at this location field, you can see that any that are in the United States have the letters USA in it. So we can use that to filter and pick those that are in the United States. Later on, when we do a challenge and just only pick the ones in Idaho, we can do the same thing because it will say Idaho, just like this one says Alaska. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in a filter. So click on filter. And so the field that had this information in it was the location. So I'll just pick location here. And then I'd say the location contains, and then the value would be USA. And so if I were to look at my locations in my table now, you can see that all of them are now in the United States. Okay, so since that's looking pretty good, I'll just click on show preview, and I can see that the number has come down here. Okay.
Well, do you have to use a direct quote for USA, or is just that good enough?
This is good enough. Yeah. So it's almost a little bit easier than if you were to do it in like ArcPro or just even in ArcGIS Online.
Right. Yeah. That was nice.
Okay. So for so we put in our filter. Okay. So we would like to display a statistic. So the count, the total number of records of quakes that are in the United States. And then we would like to also show the number of quakes in the entire world. So the first part we set up here is called the value field, the file value parameter, and we can also set up the reference. So let's go ahead and for reference, click also a statistic, and see that's the number that appears below it. And so later on, we have now two different numbers, and the top number will be referred to as the value, and this one will be referred to as the reference. And you'll see that on the next tab right there as well. Okay, so in this case, we do not want to set a filter because we'd like to get everything. And again, we just want to see the count, the number of earthquakes. So this is looking pretty good. So next, let's go to the indicator tab. So this is the place where you format what's on here. And so right now you can see this value in brackets, which is the 1812, and then the reference in brackets, which is the 2372. So we'll keep those. So for the top text, We'll just say earthquakes in the USA. And then the middle text is the value. If we want, we can even add a little icon in there. So if I click, for example, on left and just pick, any kind of icon that you like, it will put it right in there. And then the bottom here, this reference here, I need to basically say what that means. So here I'm going to say quakes in the world. And see how I just keep this in my sentence right. And the little squirrely brackets basically just tell you that it's a parameter. So it will just go in, grab the statistics, and then replace that. Okay, so I'm thinking this is looking pretty good. So then that leaves us the general tab. So just like we gave the map a name earlier, here we can give this indicator a name. So let's just call it earthquake counts. Oh my goodness, I have trouble typing today. There we go. I could put in a title, but that would make my my indicator a little bit crowded. But if you look in your workbook, I put it in there. This kind of shows you where it would go. If I were to put in a title, it would go right along the top. If I put in a description, it would appear right in the bottom here. So in some cases that might make sense. In other cases, your whole indicator just gets to be too crowded. It just depends on the layout of your entire dashboard. But I would say, the way that we're doing it right now and the dashboard that I have in mind, it's just too crowded. But you could put it in if you want to. One thing that I would like to turn off, and you'll notice over and over again that I'm just keep turning it off, is this last update date. Because this makes it seem like the last earthquake happened, 3 minutes ago. And so basically what this tells you is how long ago did your dashboard go back to the source data and just refreshed it. And I think maybe some people tend to confuse that with when is your source data actually updated. So honestly, I don't know if the service we are using, if that's being updated, every couple of minutes or every 15 minutes. I am not sure, but this might give the impression it's updated a couple of seconds ago when it's definitely not. And so I typically tend to turn that off. Okay, so with that, I say we are done. So we have a huge map and a huge indicator. So with that, let's just take a look at our challenge. Let's see which one I'm doing next. Okay, so let's work on our second indicator. So we are on step 16 on page 9 in your workbook. And a really easy way to create another indicator, especially if you are using the same source data, is to go ahead and just copy the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate the first one. Once I got it duplicated, I'll go ahead and then configure it. So for this one, we want to look at the average magnitude. And so I want to show that worldwide. So we don't really need this filter anymore for the USA. So I'm going to delete that. Let me see what I'm doing here. Okay, let me go back to my slide because I'm just trying to highlight something here. Because there's different ways that you can set up this indicator. Let me show this from the current slide right here. Okay, so for the value type, and you're looking at that right now on your dashboard, you can choose either a statistic or you can choose a feature. And so here I just kind of wanted to highlight what the differences would be. So if you pick a statistic, like we did earlier, you can get the count. I can put in an average, in which case if I say, average magnitude, it will just give you the average magnitude or the minimum or the maximum or anything like that. If you were to put in a value field, and let me just do this as a demo. It will actually show you the result for every single row. And so here we have over 2,200 earthquakes. And so it will actually show you a lot of indicators on top of each other, each one showing that. So let me go back and just show you that as a demo. Okay, so for this, I went to feature, and I'm just gonna filter real quick. You can just follow along, and I'm just gonna say that my magnitude is equal to 4.1, just to kind of limit a little bit how much data I am dealing with. Instead of over 2,000, I have 13 of them. That's the only reason I'm putting the filter on. But if I say, okay, I'm gonna look at a feature, and I want to look at the field, let's say the depth near the bottom here, and I show the preview, it is essentially just going to give me the depth of those 13 different earthquakes that I selected earlier. This is kind of hard for people to interpret on a dashboard, but sometimes maybe it would make a lot of sense to put in something like this, especially if you only have just a couple of rows. For the statistic, if I put in a statistic and then the average, and now if I pick magnitude, it should come out at 4.4 exactly because I selected those out earlier. So that's kind of the difference between picking a statistic here or picking a feature. All right, so let's go back to our exercise where I do want you to pick a statistic. And I'm going to take this filter out because we don't need a filter this time. And so we want to only look at those that happened in the last 3 days. So we do need to put in a different filter that only looks at those in the last 3 days. One of the attributes that we have is actually super handy for that. There is one that is called hours old. So anything that is 3 times 24, because we're interested in 3 days, 3 times 24 is 72. So anything that is less than 72 hours old must have happened in the last 3 days. So let's set a filter on that and just look at the last 3 days. Okay, so I'm going to hit filter. Then I'm going to go to the hours old. And I am going to say that that has to be less than, or actually less or equal than 72 hours. Okay, so here we can tell that just in the last 3 days, there were 869 earthquakes. That's a lot, by the way. Okay, and so for the statistic, we are interested in the count. So we want to know how many occurred in the last 3 days. We don't need a reference. So this one is still left over from the previous one, and then we made a copy. So I will click none here. So you can tell the whole reference is gone. And when I click on the preview, I should just see the one number. So the number of earthquakes in the last 3 days. Okay, so it looks like we got our number. I will go then to the indicator tab and put in the information. Ah, let's go back to data. Sorry for being a little bit confused, because we are interested in the average magnitude. So even though there were 869 earthquakes, we do want to know the average magnitude. So I'll just click the average, and then I'll pick the magnitude. Okay, so the average magnitude was just over 1.5. Okay, sorry about that. So far we have set the filter, and we've added in the average magnitude. Then I can go to my indicator, and now my titles make more sense. So I have landed on page 10 in your workbook. So the average magnitude is 1.03. And I can just even put in right here during the last 3 days. So in the workbook, I actually ended up going to the General tab. And then I can also add that in as a title. So what I did there is I added in during the last 3 days as a title. So this came out a little bit different than the workbook. Yes, Jeff, you make a really good point. We should probably edit the average magnitude to 2 digits, or even 1 digit rather than 2. Which you would change in the map itself. So a little bit later on, we'll have a similar example where we have a date appear that is formatted in a certain way. And I'll show you how you can go back to your web map and actually make those changes. And here you could do that too. Okay, so just for fun, I'm going to make this a different color. So I will change my text color to white and my background color to blue, just to kind of have it stand out a little bit from my other indicator. So I think I am done here. So I'll click done. Now I have 2. So now that we have a couple of elements, we can start rearranging them. So when I hover in the top left, I can click on drag item, and I can put it underneath my other indicator and change the size of them however I would like. Okay, starting to come together. So let me go ahead and save my dashboard, and let's move on from indicators and add a gauge. So the gauge will show us what percent of earthquakes that are in the USA are actually occurring inside Idaho. So I'll go ahead, and I arrived at page 11 here, and let's add in a gauge. So we're still using the same data, the recent earthquakes, the events by magnitude. So we only would like to count the earthquakes that are in Idaho, and so we can use the same technique that we used earlier. So I will click on filter, and I will say that the location name needs to contain the word Idaho. Okay, and then again, we would like to show the count. Oh, didn't look that like that too. Okay, that makes more sense. So we had 39 earthquakes in Idaho, and I think this data spans like the last 2 months or so. And later on, when you look at the map, most of them are still in the Stanley area. Okay, so we are interested in a statistic, the count, so that's already set there. Then it's going to ask you in this indicator here, we want to go from what number to what number. So 0 makes sense, but for the 100, we would like to show how many earthquakes there are in the USA and how many of those are in Idaho. So instead of this 100, we actually want to show the number of earthquakes in Idaho. So for the maximum value, click on statistic. And we are again referring back to the same layer. And then for the filter, we would like to put in all the earthquakes in the US. So let me click on filter, and we can use that location field again to pick only those earthquakes that include or contain the word USA. All right. So we can see that we have about 1,800 earthquakes in all of the USA, and 39 of those were in Idaho. All right, so with that, let's format our gauge a little bit more. So you can pick the style that you like. In this case, I like progress better. You can turn this into a circle, a horseshoe, or a half donut. Your choice. I'll pick my half donut. We can choose to show this in absolute numbers or as a percentage. So let me go ahead, show this as a percentage. Sometimes, especially if the numbers are not that large, I don't really like this notation here. So if you don't like the formatting, you can just go into formatting and unclick the prefix to toggle between showing the full number and the smaller number. But I think it would be neat to show it like this. That is a really good question to show both the number and the percentage. And honestly, I am not sure about that. I'll have to research that and get back to you. And then we can change the colors if we like. The text color, the band color, and the band background. I like the gray for the band background. I'm a big fan of blue, actually this blue here. So just to kind of keep it consistent with the rest of my dashboard, I'll just pick blue. If I wanted to show the percentage, just as a whole percentage, I can take out one of the number signs, so the pound signs, or if I wanted to show, more decimal points, I can just add them in right here. Then on the general tab, I will go ahead and change the name of my gauge. So the Idaho versus USA gauge. For the title, I'll just put in the percent of quakes in the USA that are in Idaho. I'll just keep my coloring consistent. I'd like to use my heading 3, center it in the middle, go from there. I'll make my text color the same color. We'll move my last update text and then go from there. So I think this gauge is done. All right, done. Okay, so next, I'd like to throw out a challenge. Let's see here. So let's add in another gauge that shows the percentage of earthquakes in the world that occur in the USA. So this is actually a very similar gauge to the one that we just built. And here I'll show you how using that duplicate is just a really quick way to put in new gauges. So on my dashboard here, let me just go ahead and save it. I'm just going to duplicate this one, configure it. I only have to change a couple of things. So here I'm interested in the location contains, instead of Idaho, I'll just move it up a level in the USA. So right now it makes sense, it's 100%, right? Because 100% of the quakes in the USA occur in the USA. But then for the maximum value here, I now want to show all earthquakes. So all I have to do is just remove my filter. So you can see really that most of the quakes happen here in the USA. My title doesn't make sense anymore. So I'll just go ahead in my general tab. I will have to give it a different name. So percentage of quakes in the world in the USA. I'll just edit my title, percentage of quakes in the world that are in the USA, and I am done. So hopefully this shows you that once you build an indicator or a gauge or anything, it's really easy to just duplicate them, make a couple of small modifications, and then just move on from there. Okay, so moving on. So we have done gauges, indicators. So next, let's take a look at lists. So here are the two lists that we are going to build. First, we will build a list showing the top 25, or if you want, 10 strongest earthquakes in our data set. And then as a challenge, we'll do the same thing we just did with the duplication, see how quickly we can build a list with the most recent earthquakes. And then finally, we'll also take a look at that survey that we put in and that you guys filled out, and add that into our dashboard as a list as well. So those are the couple of things that we're going to do list-wise. So let's add in the first one. So again, you start with the plus here, and we'll just bring in a list. So the earthquakes again are in the same layer. So we picked the right data. We don't have to put a, let's see, do we want to put a filter in? Yes, because we wanted to show the strongest earthquakes. And so what we'll do is we'll just pick the sort by magnitude. And if we put this in descending order, then the strongest earthquakes should appear along the top, right? This right over here is the number of items that are displayed in the list. So right now it will have a scroll bar and it will show 25 different items. If we just want to make a top 10 list, you would just change this to 10. All right, so right now the list doesn't look like much because I have no idea what those numbers and letters mean. So let's fix that up a little bit. So we'll work our way down and go to the list itself. So this is where we set what is shown on the list. And they give you this really handy little tool, just drop down here, where you can basically just pick those different variables that you would like to show. So I think the magnitude, we'll start with that. And then I think it would also be interesting to include the location where this takes place. And let's see, in the notes here, I have it as place. I think here it is called location. Location, oh, here, location. So location is the alias, place is the actual name of the variable, and then when it happened. So let me click that again, and let's click on event time. Now I think that the magnitude is the most sort of striking number on this list. So let me go ahead and make that just a little bit bigger. So the normal one lets you choose between those different heading formats, heading font sizes. The default lets you pick just different regular font sizes. So let's pick something bigger. And to make it stand out, I'll also make it bold. Just to kind of maybe help people see the difference better between the event time and the place, I can, for example, italicize this. Okay, so let's click done and then save your map. All right, so this is where I'd like to go back to that question, or not the question, the comment Jeff had, where maybe sometimes you want to change the font or the number of decimals in the statement here. So perhaps instead of putting the date like this, maybe I just like to know if it's on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or what it is. So the next part I will do as a demo and show you how you can change that. So this is all changed inside the web map itself. So let me go ahead and sign back into ArcGIS Online. Sign in. And then I need to pick up that web map that we were working on earlier. So I can find that in my content. And there is my getting started with earthquakes map. So I'll go ahead and open that. So to make any changes, I need to go into the pop-up for the layer where we picked up the data. So just configure the pop-up. I'll configure the attributes. And then here I can go down and find the event time. So once I click there, I can choose different formats on the right-hand side. I can choose to show the time or not. For the format, I can choose to include the day of the week. So let's just do that. And so earlier when we were talking about magnitudes, you can actually go ahead in there and just set the number of decimal points right there. But, let me make sure that my event time is still set. Okay, I'll just hit OK here. OK to get out of my pop-up. I'll go ahead and save my map. Then I'll go back to my dashboard, make sure it is all saved. And then let me hit refresh. So it's pulling this data again from the map. And you can tell that the formatting of the date has changed. And so this is actually really good. The first one time I tried to change some of my formatting like that, you're just looking inside dashboard itself, looking for the setting where you can change that. When actually this is a setting where you have to go back to your map, make the change there. All right, so let's see, we got back out of that rabbit hole. So let me go ahead and finish up the configuration of this list. Because we got this all set up, but I still need to go to the general type, the general tab. So let me go ahead and change the background color to maybe red. The separator color, let me just make that pretty dark. You can see those separators are those lines between the different items in the list. I'll remove my last update type. I'll change this into my strongest earthquakes. For the title, I'll just call this, in this case, my top 10 strongest um, earthquakes. There we go. And typically for those lists, I find that the heading 3 formatted in the middle seems to work quite well. Okay, so let me click done on that. So there's my first list. Okay, so I have another challenge, and you can see that on page 16 in your workbook, where I would like you to go ahead and duplicate this list and show the most recent top 10. And so the way we can do that is click on our list, duplicate it, configure it, and all we have to do here is just change the way that we sort it. So the ones that appear on top are the most recent. And so we can do this by date. Another attribute that we can use is to do it by hours old. And if we do this by ascending order, then all the ones that are 0 hours old, in other words, that are happening right now, would appear along the top. So let's go ahead and fix that up on my list, because I think it would be really interesting to, instead of the event time, just to kind of write down how long ago this happened. So I'll put in my hours old, and maybe to format it a little bit, I'll put a comma in there, and I'll just say hours ago. So just this hour here, you can see that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 earthquakes. All right. You can choose to add a symbol in there or no symbol. Let's keep the symbol in. And we need to change the title on the general tab. So let me go ahead and say top 10 most recent quakes. And we have our second list. Now, to preserve a little bit of real estate, I'm going to move one list on top of the other one. So I can drag my item, and if I hover it like right smack in the middle of a previous one, I can put them on top of each other. So to help people figure out where they can find a specific list, I can change it at the bottom. And so I will call the one on the left the strongest quakes, and the one on the right, let me just click away from that, most recent quakes. Okay, so that saves a little bit of real estate. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add in another list showing the results of the survey. So here we have another list, and this time I'll pick the survey results. I can show the top 25. Experimentation has shown that you can add in a couple hundred, but I find once you get past about 100 items in the list, it really starts to affect the performance of your dashboard. Like, it takes longer to load it up and to get all the items in the list. And so we would like to sort those so that the most recent ones are shown on top. So to do that, we'll just use the when did you notice it, and we'll just put this in descending order. And right now, we were not showing the date just yet, but it will show up once we configure our list. So let's go there next. And the way that I'd like you to configure that, let's see which page we are on. We are on page 17 here. I would like to add in your name. Hopefully that shows up. When did you notice? Creator, editor. I am not sure why sometimes it doesn't show up. But instead, let's put in when did you notice? You can see in descending order. And then let's put in how would you characterize the shaking? And just to really sort of make this stand out, what I'll do is I'll make the letters white and the background red. So it's a little bit obnoxious, but just to kind of experiment with the different colors and font options that you have. And in this case, let's just say none. So it's just basically just a list of the different items that have been submitted. Okay, and for the general tab, it is called the survey results. And for the title, I'll just say crowdsourced earthquake data. All right, so just put it in the middle and turn it into heading 3 and say done. Okay. Or at least we can make it a little bit smaller. Okay. So that brings us to the charts, the pie charts and the regular charts. So the first one that I would like to bring in is a pie chart. And we'll go back to the events by magnitude. And what I would like to show is a pie chart that shows the different types of events, whether it's a quake, an ice quake, an explosion, what it is. And so let's take a look at the different types of pie charts. There's a couple of slides that I need to catch up on and show you. This is one of them here, current slide. So we talked about lists and surveys. So I've seen some great examples during the workshop earlier this week. This right here is another example. This is used by one of the health districts for ordering vaccines. So people use a survey 123 to order a vaccine. And this dashboard basically just shows the orders that are coming in, which have been submitted to the distribution center, when the delivery is complete. So this dashboard just gives them a one-stop shop of, you know, the whole ordering and what's being shipped and how it's moving along in the process. The second example here is another one that I'm building for a different health district. And so this is like routes where people can go to citizens that are homebound, and so they can receive their vaccination. But every time a vaccination is done, they could fill out a survey, and then this dashboard could basically just keep track of, you know, people going around and offering those vaccinations. Other examples, permits, flow meter visits, just things like that. So there's quite a bit to it. And then I wanted to go to the pie chart. Yes. So when you start looking at the data for the pie chart, it gives you an option to use categories from this grouped value, features, or a field. So we'll be using grouped values, but I wanted to show you what features and fields would do and how it's different. So for that, let's take a look at this database. I have a number of counties here, as well as the dose 1 and dose 2 vaccines that have been delivered, and as well as the total. And this is information that I pulled off the public website from Health and Welfare. So if I were to go ahead and I wanted to show for those counties here, what percentage of vaccines went to each one of the counties that you see here. So in this case, I want to look at features. So think of features as the rows right here. And so you can see that each row gets a different slice of the pie, and then it just tells you the percent of the total vaccine that they received. For the fields, you are now looking at the columns. And so each one of the columns will take up a slice in the pie. And so here If I put in two columns, for example, dose 1 and dose 2, you can see that each column takes up, a part of the pie. So comparing the first dose with the second dose. All right, so in our case, let's go ahead and use those grouped values. Our category field is the event type. The count is because we want to know how much in each occurred. So with the basic setup, let's go to our chart. I always like to increase the font size a little bit. I like the start angle because it kind of looks kind of busy up there, but maybe if I move this over a little bit to the right, I can fit it better with my other elements on my map. If I want to, I can turn this chart into a donut, a thick donut or a little donut, whatever I like. For the hover text, if I leave it on, when I hover over one of those slices, it will actually tell me what's going on. If I don't like that, I can turn hover off. Here I can choose if I would like to show the values or I would show the percentage. And again, here if I show the values, you can see it sort of gives this notation with the K in it for the 1000. If I don't like that, I can go ahead and turn that off. If I do a percentage, I can choose here how many decimals I want to have at the end. So for my slices part, I can change the colors and the labels. And so, for example, I could turn my explosions into bright red and make that change. I can change the thickness of the outline a little bit. And in this case, that might be kind of nice because the earthquakes of the ice quakes are pretty slim and sometimes they show up better if you actually use an outline. So then on the general tab, let's call this event types. And again, let's turn off the last updated text. Okay, so that's our one pie chart. So let's move on to our serial charts. And let me just drag this underneath here just to have a little bit more space. Okay, serial chart. So I would like to create two of those. And I think we're doing okay time-wise that I can still show you how to activate everything afterwards. So for the first one, let's make a bar chart that shows the number of earthquakes over time per hour. So there's the frequency right here, the date right there. And then the second, we'll just make a chart based on the survey results. So how people rated the earthquake that they felt. So let's start with the first one. So we need to add in a serial chart. We'll pick the events by magnitude layer. So the one that we would like to show, so keep the grouped values, is the event, not the event type, the event time. There we go. The minimum period, so right now it is grouped by day, but I would actually like to see it grouped by hour. So right now you can see the maximum is about 323 per day. So that should go down, by a factor of 24 if we change this by hour. There we go, that makes sense. And the count sounds good to me. So for the chart portion, let's go ahead and just make the font a little bit bigger again. For the category axis, that is our x-axis, we can put in a scroll bar, which is kind of nice because it allows you to sort of zoom in and zoom out as you go along. And for the title, so that is what you want to label your x-axis. So I'll just put in the date. And one of the things that I like to do here is rotate this so it's at a little bit of an angle. And I find it's just a little bit easier to see. So your value axis is your y-axis. So in this case, those are the number of quakes per hour. Sometimes when you just have like very low frequencies, it will actually show you like half counts. So if you don't like that, you can select that it only shows integers only. Depending on what you're working with, you might want to use a logarithmic scale. The guides allow you to highlight a certain range in your data. So let me add in a guide. And let's put one in, let me see here. The top 5 to 10. So here you can see from 5 to 10, it now highlighted that in gray. So for example, if you have a chart showing, you know, acidity levels, like pH levels, and maybe you just want to highlight that range that is, you know, non-lethal, you can put in a guide like this. So for the series, you can change the color. You can choose to put in labels. Although in our case, that's going to be kind of crazy since we have so many bars that are in there. So let me turn those labels off. But our hover text still allows us to, you know, hover over and just get the specific data points. Now, in this case, we'll use the line of the bar chart since a line doesn't really make sense. So with that, let's just go on to our general tab. And there, let me see here, we would like to call this I need to skip forward a couple of pages here. Quakes per hour. And I think with the X and Y axis labeled, it's not really needed or necessary to add in a title, but you can if you want. And again, I'll just remove the last update text. So with that, this one's done. It's a pretty white chart, so I'll just go ahead and I'll just dock it like right at the bottom of everything. There we go. So let's make one more chart and then we'll start activating all the elements on your map. So the last one is I want to show, based on the survey results, how many people experienced different levels of shaking. So I'll just go ahead, click plus, add in another serial chart. In this case, I would like to use the survey results. I'd like to see the grouped value, so the count for each one of those different shake levels that you guys indicated. So how would you characterize the shaking? And I think that's all we have to do here. So for the chart, we can try setting this as a vertical, although I would say it's a little bit busy. Maybe this one, because the labels are a little bit wider, it makes more sense to put this down as a horizontal chart. On the category axis, we can just put in a title, for example, the number of incidents or frequency. Actually, that does not make sense. That needs to go on my next title. So I can put that here, frequency. All right. And so this looks like a pretty good overview. For the series, we can make every one of them the same color, or we can color them by category. On the general tab, we'll just give your element a name. Categorize shaking. We can give it a title. I don't think that's necessary here, but you could if you wanted to. And I will just click done on this one here. And then I'll go ahead and move it over a little bit. Okay. So I think we have added in as many elements as we can, and we've really hit the most different types. So with that, let's activate your map and allow people to make selections and do things like that. So the first step to do that is we need to add in a sidebar. So I'm working here on my laptop, so my real estate is getting pretty small here, but let's just add one more thing to it, and then that's it. So the first time I was using this, I was thinking, what is a side panel? And it doesn't look like I can really do anything with this, but it is really quite helpful for you to set up elements that allow you to select certain things. And so for your sidebar here, let's bring it in. You can change your background color and your text color if you like, but there's really not a lot of configuration that appears here. So let's click done on that. Okay. So, wow, we sure have a lot going on here. Let's make this map just even a little bit bigger. Okay. All right. So selectors, there's different types of selectors. So when you hover in the top left corner, let's go ahead and add in a category selector. So those are tools to sort of make all your dials in your map and everything change based on, you know, whether you pick a certain event type or you pick a certain magnitude. And it really helps people dive in and dig into your data. So we will put in a selector to select by event type, whether there was a tsunami warning, yes or no. Will allow people to put in a magnitude range as well as a date range. So we are putting in the first one right now where people can select a specific event type. So we would like to, again, use the grouped values, and we'll pick them from the events by magnitude. The category field were those different types of events. Group values, category fields, not event ID, event type. There we go. So you can see the couple of different options right there. So what I am going to do is I am going to set the maximum number of categories, which is how many items can appear in this drop-down list here, to 5. I mean, right now you can see 4, but I'd like to add one extra one in there. So 5. We'll just sort them ascending. We'll just tell people to select one or more event types. We can have them pick just a single event type, or we can allow them to pick combinations of event types. For the display threshold, I'll pick 5 because we'll never have more than 5 options. Because the 5th option that I am going to put in is this none option. And I am going to call this include all event types. So basically, this is just a way for them to reset. So if they select an event type, they can now go back and just include everything again. So in essence, just unfilter it. We need to give it a name, although at this point, since we're only doing 2, I can live with the default name. So let me click done on there. There we go, and click done. So we now have the 5 options, the original 4, as well as the one to include all the different types. And so you can tell that people can, you know, select them and unselect them. Okay. So with that, let's add in our next category selector. So the second one that I wanted to do was whether there was a tsunami warning or not. So I am just adding in that selector. This again is a grouped value. It's one of the fields that you can find in that table with the recent earthquakes. For the category field, we need to scroll quite a ways down to look for the tsunami alert. Let me see here. Code tsunami, that's the one. Okay, so it looks like we only have the one value here. So seeing as how I want to add another non-value, so just to include all the quakes, I'm just going to allow two categories. And I am going to override, override or load? Okay, so I clicked on load, load categories. This is where I clicked. So the category one, I can now put in a label that is a little bit more descriptive than the number one. So I'll just say, well, one means that the tsunami alert is issued. And then for the label, I'll just say select whether a tsunami alert was issued. I'll let them pick a single since there's really only one option. Set my display threshold to 2, and for my none option, I'll include the title include all quakes. So the way that that appears is a list like this. Select whether an alert was issued, include all, or an alert was issued. And then they can go back to include all. Okay, so we need to put in two more selectors, and then we can just make the whole thing work together and finish up. This time, let's add in a number selector because we would like people to give a range of magnitudes and then basically just have all the data and the charts and everything on the dashboard just filter down to just that. So let's pick a range. I like an input box, but you can put in what you like. For the label, I'll set that to select magnitude range. And I'm not sure that we need placeholder text right here. I guess we can put in a 0 and a 10 just to make sure that we capture this all. Now be aware that you don't put in like 4 to 5 because you don't want to actually just start out by filtering it. You want people to actually go in and actively filter that. And this is all there is to it. So let's just click done. And the last one is a date selector. So we are now on, let me see here. We are now on page 27 on your 27 or 26, around there. So let's put in a date picker. We'll put in a range, and then we'll just say, you know, pick a date range. And then we allow people just to, you know, grab their own dates. Okay, so with that, let's click done, and I am going to save my dashboard. So now when we activate all of this, and let me go back to my slides here, we need to think about how we would like to do that, and what we can, what elements sort of interact with each other and which ones do not. So for example, when we talk about event types, we can filter certain things, but not others. So the list of surveys that we collected here, we didn't collect anything about event type. So this filter here will have no impact on this list, or this chart here that shows the results of the survey as well. And so the same is true for the tsunami warning. Will have an impact on most of the elements here, but not on the survey data. As far as the magnitude range, again, we did not select that or collect that information in the survey itself, so it does not make sense. The date, however, we did collect, when did you feel this earthquake? So there is a date in there that we can use in our date selector. So with that in mind, we can go ahead and activate all our selectors and configure all those actions. So let's start with our different selectors here. So for the first one or more event types, I will go ahead and click on configure and then go to the actions tab. So it says here when the selection changes. So in other words, when somebody goes in here and actually picks one of those items, what do we want to do? What do we want to change? So we can start adding in targets. Well, we do not want to change the survey results. We do want to change the events by magnitude because that's where we picked up this attribute. And by filtering the layer itself, those are the points that are on the map. We will actually see that if you pick something, all the other points will just disappear from the map. In terms of indicators, for the earthquake counts, we want to have it impact the value, the reference. For the Idaho versus USA, we also want to change the value and the maximum value. In essence, we want to do everything except for the ones that are tied to the survey. So for the 3-day stats, we want to do the value and the maximum value. We will like to change it for the strongest earthquakes. Our first list, which I can tell I forgot to name. Luckily, I named the other one, so I know that this is the list of earthquakes. We don't want to do the survey results. The event types, probably not, because all it will do is just change my pie chart in just the one event type that I picked. But let's see how that goes. The next one is a serial chart, and we do want to show that. And let me see here, the category of shaking, those were actually survey results, so we cannot not filter by those. Okay, so let me click done here and show you how that works. So if I were to pick icequake, you can see that most of my numbers just completely changed, right? And my little pie chart here turned into just 100% icequakes. If I add in explosion, my numbers should change and update. You can see both of them are in there right now. And if I go back to include all event types, you can see all of them. Okay, so the second one we have to configure the same way. So let me click configure there, go back to my actions, and essentially just add in the same elements as I did before. So my events by magnitude, anything that is not related to my surveys. Value, maximum value, percent of quakes in the world. So yes, also the maximum value, my list of strongest earthquakes, the list that I duplicated, not my 3-day stats, yes. Not my survey list, yes, my event types, yes on the number of quakes per hour, and not on the category shaking, because that is what you guys filled in those surveys. Okay, so with that, let me click done. So I can test this because if I say include those where a tsunami alert is issued, let's see, my numbers should go down. They're not. Include all of them. Okay, well, I'll have to look at that later. Oh, there it goes. Good, phew. It's just, I had to be patient. All right. The magnitude range. So let's configure that. And so in our actions, we can filter anything that has a magnitude field in it. So not our survey results, but our recent earthquakes, events by magnitude. The shake intensity has a magnitude field. All the different indicators that are based on this recent earthquakes field layer have a magnitude field. So let's add all of them in there. Our strongest earthquakes, my first list, not my survey list, yes on my event types, quakes per hour, but then not the categorized shaking because it was again based on the survey. And so here, we just basically told dashboard, okay, pick a number between 0 and 10, but it doesn't know yet what you're referring to. Are you talking about the depth, or are you talking about, you know, some other number, the ID, anything else? And so here we basically need to go ahead and tell it, okay, compare this range 0 to 10 with this particular field, this particular attribute in the table, and if it fits within that range, go ahead and use it on the dashboard. So the filter field is the magnitude, because we told them to select the range that certified the magnitude. So I'll just go ahead and change all of them to magnitude. And you can do it whichever way you like. I'd like to do this in a specific order. I find it keeps my brain more organized. And there's my last one. All right, so let's click done. And so if I were to put in a magnitude range, let's say anything that is over 4 to 10, you can tell that we did have a couple of those earlier today. So 2 hours ago, 4.9 in Indonesia. And so you can basically just filter out everything else. Okay, so let me just set this back to 0. So then the only thing left to do is set up our date range. So let's go ahead and configure that, set up the actions. And this is the one where we figured out that everything has a date on it. So we can just go ahead and as a target, just basically just pick everything. All right, so the only thing that I just have left now are just the two other category selectors, which you could find on the sidebar, the tsunamis and the event type. So we don't have to worry about those. And everything else, we'll just have to go through and make sure it knows which date field in your data you would like to compare this to. For the surveys, that would be when did you notice the earthquake? And for everything else, that would be your event time. So you can tell here is the list of survey results. So it's asking again, like when you noticed it. And once I get them all done, I will just click done right here and I got all my selectors set up. Now, those selectors are not the only ones that can cause an action. The last two that I want to show are the lists that can set an action. And let's just pick this list right here as an example. So I'll just go ahead and start configuring this list. For my actions, I can say that when my selection changes, I would like to flash and zoom to my earthquake map. So let me click done on that. And just to show you this again, let's configure the other lists as well. So let's click on actions. I want to flash and zoom my earthquake map to whichever people are selecting. So let me click done on that. And let me just make this map a little bit bigger. All right, so let's take a look at this quake right here. And so I can tell that the first one happened in Berkeley. The second one happened, looks like right here in Nampa. So one of the things that you notice here is that it really zooms in tight, right? So it might make more sense to not zoom in as closely when you click on one of them. And the same would be true for the other earthquakes. So one thing I can do is when I go into the map, I can configure that on my settings where I can change my zoom scale from 10,000, let's say, to 1,000,000. And let me click done on that. And so now when we click on any of them, you can tell it highlights, but it doesn't zoom in as close. So for the one here in Nampa, you can tell it's just not zoomed in as far. So the last action, and let me just save my map here before we go, is we can also use the map itself to filter data and decide how it shows up in those indicators. So to do that, let's click on configure and let's click on map actions. So here it says when the map extent changes, we want to filter, for example, the earthquake counts. So let me just click on values here and the reference. And let's just test out how this works. But you can add in, all the other indicators as well. So let me go ahead and do that. And so this would be the indicator to keep an eye on. So as I zoom and pan around, let me zoom out a little bit more. You can see that this number changes based on what you are seeing in this little map over here. So one word of caution is we are now filtering and selecting data in different ways. And so we don't want to make it confusing for people. If the map's zooming and you're zooming over here, you can have many different filters, happening at the same time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you set up all those different filters, make sure that people understand how to use it and it's just not too busy for them. So I think we are done setting up this entire dashboard. So let me save it one final time. One thing that we have not looked at yet is, when we selected it, it turned blue. So there's some settings here that you can set. You can make your entire theme dark or light. So there's some settings there that you can play around with. Let me just hit the X on that. Let me show you a couple more slides and then we are done. I might actually be done on time today. Let's see, slideshow from current slides. Okay, and so soon, I think this July, if I remember the presentation correctly that Esri gave last Monday, in July there will be dashboard beta coming out. A lot of people might already be using it. You can already try it. And so if you want to build something in the new beta, if you are in ArcGIS Online and you click on your waffles, it's actually one of the options right there. You can try it out. It seems like the biggest differences between the one that we are currently using and the new one is how you can have certain elements show up based on selections made by the user. So maybe if they don't make a selection, you don't want to show it, but if they do make a selection, then you want to show it. It supports standalone tables. Right now you cannot use those yet. Also, there's a new map viewer that replaces the web map viewer in ArcGIS Online. And so this new dashboard works with this new map viewer. And from what I've seen, it sort of has some other like nice stylized little things in there. So it just looks a little bit different and really kind of nice. So if you haven't checked this out and looking for more training tools, go to Learn ArcGIS, a great tool. The next workshop in this series is coming up the middle of March, when we'll do the second part of getting started with ArcGIS Online, when we'll dive a little bit deeper into pop-ups and customizing some items. We'll talk a little bit more about web mapping applications. We've already dove into it a little bit here and there, and of course today we dove really deep into the dashboard web mapping application. And that is it for today. So if you have any suggestions for training, questions, feedback, or let me throw this in here. If you are really good at something, for example, analyses in ArcGIS Online, I am not opposed to having other people take a turn teaching a class. So with that, thank you. I've recorded this training, and I will post this in the next couple of days. Bye.